The Volt Crypto Industry Revolution and Tech ETF will trade under the ticker symbol BTCR and will give investors indirect access to Bitcoin by investing in companies that have direct exposure to the original digital token. Let's get to the CEO who somehow convinced the SEC to give his ETF the stamp of approval, Volt Equities' Tad Park. Tad, you were one of many applicants, some much bigger than Volt, who've been working for years to get SEC approval. I mean, I'm thinking of Invesco, I'm thinking of VanEck. I know those guys at VanEck have been working forever for that. Why do you think Gary Gensler and company picked yours?
Yeah, I think that the reason for that is that this is an ETF that doesn't invest in Bitcoin directly, but we try to get at what people are actually looking for, which is correlation to Bitcoin's price movement. And if we look at what happened in the last year, some of these miners and companies like MicroStrategy have actually been able to move explosively with Bitcoin. So the light bulb that went off is, hey, if these companies are really focusing on Bitcoin and get majority of their income and revenues from Bitcoin, it makes sense that they tend to move along with Bitcoin's price. And that's what really gave me the idea to launch an ETF that was solely focused on the Bitcoin industry, to try to achieve what investors are looking for in this type of vehicle. And we were very pleased to finally make it through the application process with SEC.
You must have been cheering because, again, there have been many very major names in the ETF world that were knocking at the SEC's door for a long time. How long was your application in, and what was your methodology beyond what you've just articulated for picking specific names in them?
Yeah, so we started the process at the beginning of this year, and in the January timeframe, but we didn't actually submit it with the SEC until later.
Okay.
But it did take longer than normal. We did have to extend it several times as we're doing a lot of back and forth with the SEC. And they were a little more open to this because we were investing in the companies as opposed to the coin itself, which has other issues like custody issues and things like that. So yeah, we were really excited to make it through, and yeah, we were very pleasantly surprised that they're open to have such a Bitcoin focused ETF.
Does that confuse you though? Because Gary Gensler has been quite firm that he's wary of what's going on in the crypto world. He wants to protect investors from themselves, from what appears to be still a very nascent industry or investment. And so I get that. And then here he is slowly but surely allowing certain toe dips into the opportunity for investors to dive in. But if you were sitting across from Gary Gensler, what would you recommend he start with when it comes to regulation?
Yeah, I actually think that Gary Gensler is a little bit misunderstood. He actually is pro-Bitcoin, in my opinion. He taught the cryptocurrency course over at MIT, as many people know.
Right.
But when you actually dive into the course itself, and he points out some of the problems with these regulated vehicles, how do we get crypto into the regulated space? And one of the main problems he points out is issues like custody. So he's spot on. I think those are problems too. If you say that someone's custodying the Bitcoin, but that company can be hacked into, then how is that protecting the everyday people, right? So if I can say, hey, I have a gold ETF or I have a Bitcoin ETF, but if I'm storing that gold in my basement, is the SEC going to allow that? Probably not. And unless companies can show that they can custody it and actually address a lot of the issues that he specifically mentioned were problems before they can launch in the US, it's not going to work. So actually I think that at least half of the applications out there are not even valid for a Bitcoin ETF.
Okay.
Because they're not addressing what Gary Gensler is saying. So ultimately, in summary, I think that he's pro-Bitcoin, but the regulations do not see what they're looking for out in the market today.
Okay.
We're glad that we can just be the halfway point because these are companies, so you don't have to deal with Bitcoin custody, but yet still have a lot of exposure to Bitcoin and Bitcoin's price movement.
Really quickly, we're going to put up some of the names that will be in this fund along with MicroStrategy. Give us a few other names and your number one reason for them.
Yeah, so MicroStrategy, because they hold a ton of Bitcoin, but we also are excited about companies like Tesla and Square and Twitter. Twitter allowed people to send Bitcoin back and forth and basically essentially like tweet people Bitcoin across the world. It's never been done before. And we're also excited about a lot of the miners. So companies like Bitfarms can actually mine a Bitcoin for $9,000, even though Bitcoin's at $55,000 right now. So we're really excited about the pace of innovation in the field and excited about the industry. We think it's just getting started.
It's great to see you. I know you're launching in a couple of weeks. You don't have a hard date, but we'd love to have you back on launch day.
Yeah, that would be a pleasure. Thank you.
Anytime. Tad Park,